We're ready. We're walking around.
Gonna stand here though.
I can see the little live banner at the top this time, so I think we're good.
Okay, awesome.
There it is.
Perfect. Hi guys, so thank you again for joining us today. I'm so excited. Our supporters don't know, but we actually had an amazing conversation yesterday, and it was so inspiring, but we had some technical difficulties, and it didn't make it to our social media streams, but I'm still feeling that inspired energy about sustainability, and so I'm really hoping that we'll have that great conversation again. So if each one of you could just introduce yourselves and tell our audience who you are and what you kind of research and do. Katie, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start, no worries. My name is Katie. I'm the conservation manager here at Loggerhead Marinelife Center. And what the conservation department does is we develop and implement conservation solutions to man-made threats facing sea turtles. So one of the big ones we're going to talk about today is, and a big threat to our sea turtles is marine debris, and specifically ocean plastics.
And you can see all your ocean plastic right behind your head, right, Katie?
Here.
And then Ashley, will you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I'm Ashley. I'm actually a student at Clemson University in South Carolina. And so I study communication and originally kind of got introduced to the idea of sustainability through my anti-trafficking advocacy. I really found a link between environmental sustainability and ethical work practices in the textile industry. And so I've really been learning, just learning and researching and kind of growing my knowledge about that issue over the last 3 years at Clemson.
And One World, can you introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Elana, and this is my husband, Stephen.
Oh.
We opened One World Zero Waste, a zero waste like grocery store to fill a void in our community to make eco-friendly and zero waste shopping really easy and convenient for everybody.
And how long have you guys had your store open for?
About 1.5 years. Almost
about 1.5 years. That's awesome. And I serve on the marketing team at Loggerhead. My background is just I've always had an interest in sustainability and took that on from more of a communications perspective and helping people, dive into sustainability. So first, I want to start off by asking you guys kind of how you first got involved in sustainability. Each one of you touched on it a little bit, but just providing our supporters with a little more background. And we'll start again with Katie. We can just work away around the screen that way.
Sure. So I grew up with a marine biologist as a mother, and in our house, it was just really stressed that it was important to protect our planet and to make sure that we were making responsible choices when it came to our actions and to help protect our planet. So.
And Katie, you were a scuba dive instructor before coming to Loggerhead, right?
Yes, that as well. That's definitely just honed in the fact that it's really important for all of us to figure out what actions we can take to help protect our planet.
And you got to see a lot of like the marine debris firsthand in our waterways, kind of while you're doing your dives on reefs and around, the coast, right?
Absolutely.
All right. And Ashley, can you tell us a little bit about how you were introduced to sustainability?
Yeah, so I touched on it a little bit already. There was an interest in the textile industry from an anti-trafficking standpoint. And then a lot of my interest and a lot of my work happened actually with Amanda at Clemson University, where I got to take part in a creative inquiry and really kind of dive into that research. She was instrumental in helping me with all of that. And so I really got to take a look at sustainable labels and kind of, how to figure out what products kind of align with your values and how to implement them into your life efficiently and sustainably.
Yeah, Ashley and I definitely share that passion for fashion, but making sure that it's not hurting our environment, which is often hard to do. And One World, would you guys tell us a little bit, since you really have a unique kind of application, you actually created something in response to the sustainability issues that you guys are seeing in our community.
Yeah, that's right. So we basically the reason we opened up our store was because we were trying to eliminate the waste that we were creating in our lives, like as much as we possibly could. But in our everyday, living out and about, it was just really difficult to make that happen. So we wanted to like create a space where it's more easy and convenient to actually shop and do everything that you need to do without creating unnecessary waste. The whole store is basically like it's created with all of our needs, what we need to live our daily lives, and then so we just like extend that to everybody else.
And that's exactly why we wanted to have this panel discussion for World Oceans Month. Is, you know, a lot of my friends and family members have expressed to me that sustainability seems daunting or overwhelming. It's hard to find options. They don't know where to look. They don't know how to verify options. And it takes a lot of research. And it's stores like yours where it actually, you guys are doing the research and making sure everything in your store is suiting those needs. So it's really awesome to kind of have that support in the community. And so that kind of segues into, I really want to talk about some of the big issues we're seeing in our consumer society right now in regards to sustainability. So at Loggerhead, and Katie will touch on this, but we see a lot of plastics and plastics in our patients. So nearly 100% of our patients that arrive to our center have been entangled in marine debris or have ingested it. And 100% of our hatchlings and post-hatchlings have actually ingested microplastics and have stomach contents filled with those plastics, and ultimately it causes them to pass away. So microplastics and plastics are definitely something that we really deal with at Loggerhead, but Katie will touch on kind of the other types of marine debris that are common problems as well. So Katie, if you can kind of tell us what you're seeing on your end.
Absolutely. So within our society, we've kind of become accustomed to having a almost disposable culture. So we use single-use plastic items for maybe 15 minutes, but if they do end up entering the marine environment, they'll never go away. Instead, they just break down over time into smaller and smaller pieces. And this really impacts the marine food chain at every level. So it starts really low with microscopic plankton. The plastic breaks down to be that small and then works its way up and bioaccumulates. And as that plastic is out there floating around, it's absorbing all the toxins and all the chemicals it comes in contact with. So as it works its way up the food chain, it becomes more and more toxic. And we're part of that food chain. We're pretty high up there in the food chain. So that means that we are ingesting those toxins at a pretty high level. So it not only is important for our marine life that we are thinking about this, but also for our own health. And those microplastics are also being found in table salt. I read recently that it's even been found in snow. So it's really going in every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, and Ashley will kind of relate to this, but you know, something that we've done in our research, and part of the reason LMC conducts regular water quality studies is because microfibers are also contributing to the microplastic problem. And microfibers are really hard because they're already so tiny that you really can't see them. You actually have to take a water sample and do a specialized test to be able to identify how many microfibers are in that cup. So the plastics are just becoming so small that it's hard to even remove them from our oceans. And we're really having to get creative and figure out ways we can eliminate that from our seas. And Ashley, I know you've done a lot of research on our fashion industry, from the textiles that are produced to make our clothing to actually the processes and the packaging. So can you shed a little light on the big problems you're seeing in that industry?
Yeah, of course. So obviously an issue that we're seeing is with the increase in online shopping, you're seeing a lot of just shipping back and forth of clothing. And that in and of itself is a big issue. But if you actually look at the big picture, there is a larger energy consumption with just actually making the textiles that make your clothes. The carbon footprint of shipping is a big issue, but even just making them is an even larger issue. And so I see the constant turnover in our wardrobes and the constant buying and then throwing away of old clothes is really a big issue. It kind of goes back to that cultural, like, disposable mindset. I think in the last 20 years, I read somewhere that we've doubled our textile waste. And I think as of 2016, Americans on average were throwing away 80 pounds of clothing every year. So it's making its way into our landfills. It's breaking down further, that those microfibers are making their way into our oceans. There's more issues and more environmental impacts than you would imagine firsthand just from the clothes that you wear. And I think that turnover in our wardrobes is a big contributing factor to that.
Yeah, definitely just being wasteful with what we're using. And I know we talked about this previously, but returns are definitely contributing to the problem. And a lot of companies, one of their policies is to not taking returns. And so sometimes they'll just, you'll just have this item that you don't need to use, and there's not really that proper way to dispose of it. Fortunately, there are some textile recycling companies or programs. H&M has one where you can turn in material and they'll actually repurpose it, or you can get crafty and repurpose it as well. But what we're seeing with the fashion industry is it really is the entire process of fashion that kind of needs to be revamped. And I know we've seen some changes, but it's really something we need to work on. And One World, can you shed a little light on some of the problems you've seen?
I see a lot of all the single-use plastic is so deeply ingrained in our society right now that it's so hard for people to even think that there's another way, because it's just in everything. So a lot of the times when we're out at events trying to like educate and shed some light on what's going on, we often have a sign that says, "Is there plastic in your hands?" Because people are always coming over and they're really excited about all of our pretty patterns and it's awesome, but a lot of the time there's like a plastic cup or a water bottle under the arm and like all of this stuff that it doesn't register anymore.
Yeah.
So we kind of want to like break that cycle. It's just this weird cycle. You gotta grab a plastic produce bag for like one apple. But I don't know. It's just we think that by providing like education and an easy option, maybe it'll catch on more.
Mm-hmm. And the same goes with like stocking your refrigerators with plastic water bottles so that you grab and everybody like I think it's so prevalent. People just like grab a plastic water bottle on their way out the door, and every day that's a lot. Every person.
Convenience food, the frozen food aisle was the first to be empty for this whole pandemic.
Yeah.
But there's loads of produce and bulk grains, and it's so much cheaper. But a lot of the time we just think like, oh, I need this now, and it's a quick, easy thing, when it's not quick and easy if it exists on the earth forever.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect way of putting it. And I think that is something, plastic has become so ingrained in our society that it does feel overwhelming, and it's hard to find the sustainable options and really think about it. Now, I would say one of the biggest issues that I notice a lot of the people I'm close to is packaging, and definitely at the supermarket and within grocery stores. And it does take that extra effort to bring your reusable bags and bring your produce bags and be conscious of what you're picking up. I try to buy as many natural and bulk items as possible, but even for me, I haven't gotten to the point in my life where I haven't had plastic at all in the house at all. And when I am purchasing something, I'll pick up the packaging and look and see if it has recycling options, and if I'm familiar with if that can actually be recycled or how sustainable that process is. I'll read into that as well. And I know, Ashley, too, I wanted to talk to you about the discussion of using plastic to make clothing, right? So when, a few years ago, when using plastic bottles to make fabric became really popular, or weave it into fabric, these companies thought they were doing an amazing job. And it was really awesome to see big, large companies take that action and take that initiative and take waste and try to make something good. But now we're learning that there's an even bigger problem with using plastic water bottles in fashion and clothing because of the microfibers. And those micro silicone and plastic fibers are ending up in our waterways and in our food and in our marine life. So we really didn't actually create a solution. We just kind of created another problem. And so it can be really hard with that as well. But have you seen anything kind of evolve in that sector?
I think there's just an overall awareness that that might not be the best solution. I think people are looking for the right solutions, but it's difficult right now because we don't have the systems and the infrastructure, even the research that's going on. It's a long process. So I think there has been a push for more sustainable options, especially like in the packaging industry. You're seeing a lot of sugarcane research, a lot of sorghum research. There's a lot going on. I think it's just a matter of time. I like to give big companies credit where I can because they made that effort, and it's important to see that and to encourage that, but to also be open about the fact that's probably not the best solution because it is perpetuating this microfibers issue and these microplastic issue. So I think it's just time and encouragement and advocacy and kind of just encouraging these companies to continue looking for solutions.
Yeah, I agree. I'm so thankful that the companies have really decided to kind of join in on the environmentalist movement, and everyone's kind of taken action and realized we need to do something about the amount of marine debris we have in our oceans and on our beaches. But I also want to encourage companies, both big and small, to reach out to the experts. So One World, you guys have been doing it for a year and a half. People can reach out to you guys and ask for suggestions or resources or tools. Or Loggerhead, Katie literally has a database of tools and does a lot of data collection about our trash and our marine debris, where Ashley's already, so deep in studying slow fashion and ethical fashion. And it's important to consult some of these sustainability experts to make sure your company is actually doing something to help rather than something that's going to harm. And I always refer this to kind of the Nemo moment. So when Pixar came out with Nemo, and the fish gets flushed down the toilet and ends up out in the waterways, kids ran to the pet store and flushed fish down the toilet, hoping that would free them. But we all know that doesn't work that way. And so it ended up killing a bunch of fish. And it was just because of simple messaging, right? We know it's fantasy, but it didn't quite translate over to the consumer market. So also just being clear about what those actions look like. But this brings me to my next question. So some of these alternative materials, what would you suggest as an alternative to plastic that is sustainable and eco-friendly? And Katie, we can just start with you again.
Sure. So one thing that you kind of just addressed is when you are maybe in the grocery store shopping and you see a product that's maybe in a plastic container, check to see if there are any alternatives that may be in glass or a different type of material, because the problem with that plastic is, although it may be recyclable a couple of times, it's not indefinitely recyclable. So as plastic is recycled, it gets less and less quality of the material, and that doesn't happen with glass. So it's just important to keep in mind that when you see an item, maybe there might be an alternative packaging that you can look out for. So I'd say glass over glass.
And definitely avoid styrofoam, right? That could you shed a little light on the statistics regarding some of our top found marine debris materials?
Yeah, so across the board, during every cleanup, we find that between 70 and 90% of everything we're removing from the beaches is plastics. And we do. We go through every single piece of trash that's collected during beach cleanup, and we do record it all. So we know this for a fact. And the top 3 items that we find consistently are just pieces of plastic. It's hard plastic, film plastic, and foam plastic, which is that styrofoam material. So we do know that it's definitely making its way out into our oceans and on our beaches and into our marine life. So those are the most common items that we're finding.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, goes back to kind of what One World you guys touched on about that convenience culture, right? If you are living that convenience culture, styrofoam, plastic, those are definitely the most accessible and easy to find when you're eating out. Ashley, what about you in the fashion industry? What are some of the more sustainable and eco-friendly options out there?
Yeah, so I always really encourage looking for more natural fibers over synthetic polyesters and plastic-based synthetic materials. I've started slowly trying to convert my wardrobe to be filled with more cotton and linen and wool, as opposed to those kind of products. And so especially if you can find anything that's organically grown, that's going to be a huge factor as well, because even a lot of our natural fibers are grown and processed using a lot of harmful chemicals, which also make their way into the water system. Any process that uses water, drains water, is draining out everything that is used in the process to the oceans. So searching for natural fibers, and especially organic fibers. And then I'm always a big advocate for budget-friendly, small baby steps and changes in your lifestyle. And so I always like to say, synthetics are made for a reason. They are very functional. And so at least when I'm kind of trying to convert my wardrobe, always start with those practical daily pieces that don't need plastic in them. You use your workout gear, like synthetics in workout clothing is very important and it's helpful, but you don't need a shirt that's got 3 different fabrics in it just to make it cheaper. Those blended fabrics include plastic just to make it cheaper, and it's going to wear out faster on you. So try to avoid specifically your everyday t-shirts, kind of like this, that have polyester in them, that have rayon in them, things like that, especially, I think are the easiest to avoid.
Yeah, and I think it was a lot harder a few years ago. I would say I really started making my wardrobe, 75% of my wardrobe, truly eco-friendly about 5 years ago. And since then, even more. But at first, I was reading the labels on everything, and it was almost frustrating because I'd be shopping and everything I picked up, didn't really meet the criteria I was looking for. But in recent years, I've seen a lot of micro brands branch out and actually offer products. And I'm a huge fan of bamboo. I have a lot of allergies, and it has antimicrobial properties. So it really helps if you have allergies. And the amount of bamboo and hemp and eucalyptus fabrics that I've seen recently has been really inspiring as well. And about 5 years ago, I switched to bamboo sheets, and then now I have bamboo and eucalyptus. And reading more about that as well. And some of these can actually go past fashion and translate more into the consumer industry and actually create almost synthetic but natural plastic due to their fibers as well. And One World, I think you guys, you see it firsthand in your store, right? You've mentioned that everything in your store is sustainable packaging, and that's amazing because there aren't too many stores like that. So if you could tell us a little bit about what type of products you use in your store and what those sustainable materials are.
Yeah, well, just to go back kind of like to the convenience thing, like all of the things in our store are made to make your life convenient. Like convenience doesn't have to be grab something that you can throw away immediately. Convenience can be like just prepare yourself for your excursions outside. You bring a reusable container with you when you go to get food instead of grabbing something just like nonchalant. It just takes a little bit of planning, and it really goes a long way. And it makes life convenient. It makes life you can kind of, if you're focusing on doing that, you're really staying true to yourself, and that makes you feel good as well. So I'm just a big advocate of like, don't look at something don't look at zero waste as like you're losing convenience. Mm-hmm. Look at it as like you're actually living your life better and making it easier for yourself, because you don't have to rely on other companies to give you something to, sometimes packaging sucks,
You don't have to be sad that the grocery store didn't have any paper towels.
Right.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff in our store, everything we want to make sure is either, made out of cotton or some kind of natural fiber, or it's refillable for like products. So we have, or package free completely. So like shampoo bars are just come in a little cardboard box, or we have refillable liquids. Same with like household cleaners and oils and the bulk food. So a lot of, like, one of our first rules was like, I didn't want to eat anything that I didn't know what ingredient was. And then, because it's not really food, it's like a bunch of chemicals. So then after that, I realized, oh, all of that stuff is also in packaging. Mm-hmm. So cut out packaging, you're also cutting out like all these harmful foods and eating like a pure whole food diet.
Yeah, just like what Katie said with the water bottles or with the plastic. Plastic holds toxins and then releases those toxins into whatever you're eating. So a lot of people, growing up that I was surrounded with didn't know that if you microwave plastic, it kind of leached into your food. And I know that was a common discussion in the news. I remember a big news story hitting, about 7 years ago that kind of woke people up. But if it is toxic itself, it's likely to make its way into your body as well. So it's really important what you're carrying around, and looking for those items like glass or something else to make sure that those toxins aren't entering your body.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Actually, glass and also aluminum are like unlimitedly recyclable to their own. They don't lose, they don't degrade any of their. They stay aluminum, they stay glass. And also, fun fact, but with aluminum is probably the most companies actually like can make money on recycling aluminum. There's a lot of other things that are perfectly recyclable, like paper and glass, but there's not as much of an incentive for big companies and recycling plants to recycle those items because it costs more money to recycle them than it does. But aluminum is cheap to recycle, and you can and sell it again.
And I love that you mentioned that about recycling, because that's a big problem as well. And that's an issue that's facing the tech industry, and has been. It's very expensive to recycle technology, and that's why when these big tech companies like Apple first started mass producing like the iPhone, at first they did not recycle any of their products. And then after a big article came out about dumping technology in Africa, Apple actually launched their recycling program. But it makes sense for companies too, because we are losing the amount of resources that we have on this planet. And if we don't get crafty and look for sustainable options, life as we know it is not going to be the same. And that the tech industry is a really big conversation right now, because a lot of the materials that are used in technology, like computers and phones, are made out of rare minerals, and those are finite, like they are not infinite. And so we have to see if we can recycle them and make it more cost effective, and also make sure that we're not producing more carbon emissions. So recycling is a big factor of it as well. And then what are some small ways that you guys think consumers really can make their life more sustainable? I know I have conversations with a lot of my friends and family members, and like we've all talked about, it can seem daunting to make your life sustainable, but there are a few steps, and I thought each one of you could kind of speak. So Ashley, is hoping you'd speak more to your closet at your home, starting with your home and changing your life. And then One World, speaking more to like the kitchen, really. And then Katie, I thought you could kind of discuss, some of the sustainable swaps regarding a lot of the common items we find and some of the surprising items we find, because I know you find a lot of interesting items on our beach as well. So Katie, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are disposable plastics in our homes that I don't think really even realize are still washing up on our beaches and are things that we're still throwing away. Like toothbrushes, for example. Since 2018, we've actually removed over 270 toothbrushes from our beaches, which is kind of a random item that you wouldn't really think of. But a lot of things can be litter and can be plastic that you wouldn't really think of. So like lollipop sticks. This is one of the big things that have been washing up on the beaches lately, and we've removed over 3,000 of them, and they're all plastic. So just being aware of if an item is plastic, there are cardboard lollipop sticks that you can opt to purchase instead of those plastic ones. And as consumers, we do have a lot of sway over what items are being more produced than others. So if more people are just buying those cardboard lollipop sticks, I bet you will see a lot more companies switching to cardboard. So just looking around your house, we do find a lot of plastic pens too. And you can purchase metal pens or pens that are made of cardboard. So that's an item. We've removed over 1,000 since 2018 to date. So just items, if you just look around your house, you can definitely spot different items that are disposable plastic that you might not really think of because you're like, oh, I use it more than once, but then eventually I throw it away. So We, for World Oceans Day, are introducing a at-home plastic audit that you can do to just kind of see which items you're using and then what sustainable alternatives do exist.
And Katie, you know, I've heard that too. Like a lot of my friends, when they start being introspective and looking at their lives, they haven't realized how much plastic was in their life. And I loved One World. When we get to you, I want you to tell a little bit about like some of your first dates and now how you reflect back on kind of with those items. And I know too, like when you really start investigating your home, you start to see how much waste you're producing. And so, you know, like you said, your toothbrush, but you know, if we have some of our supporters who do have these items, instead of throwing it away, they could find organizations that recycle those items, right?
Absolutely. So we do in the conservation department here, with all the trash that we're collecting on the beaches, everyone wants to know what we do with it after we sort it. And we work really hard to recycle what we can. And some of those items aren't things that you would commonly think could be recycled, but we work with a company called TerraCycle, and they've developed solutions to some of the more interesting items that actually can be recycled. So cigarette litter is the #1 most commonly found litter item on beaches worldwide, and we're actually able to, through TerraCycle, recycle this cigarette litter that we are collecting off the beaches and collecting through our cigarette litter receptacles on the pier and throughout the beach. So definitely do your research and look up TerraCycle to see what items actually might be able to be recycled through this company that are just not as common and that you can't throw in your household recycling.
And making sure to look at the products you're buying. So Tom's toothpaste, on the back of it actually has the label for TerraCycle, and I believe most TerraCycle products are able to be recycled through TerraCycle are actually marked on the back. And so that's always something to keep an eye out. Katie and One World, I have a question that kind of relates right now. And I think both of you would be able to weigh in on this. So some localities and communities don't actually allow customers to bring in their own containers for takeout. And I know I've faced that as well. So what are some suggestions to minimize the amount of plastic waste and styrofoam waste at restaurants if you're trying to take out and they don't allow it? So any advice both of you guys have?
So I suggest we tried this a couple times. We haven't gone out much, but call the restaurant ahead of time and ask what they're packaging everything in. Because I know we have a little list going, but there's a few places that have compostable packaging. So just call and be like, hey, like, is your packaging compostable? And another option is like some places have more stuff wrapped in paper. Maybe a burrito can just come in something like paper, even if they're not like especially eco-friendly, like trying, it just naturally comes that way. That's a good little way to get around it. But otherwise, like if their only option is styrofoam,
yeah, you gotta
it's kind of a no-go.
Yeah.
Another good practice that we practice is, you know, we just have places that we like, that we go to on a consistent basis, and we know that those places are down for the cause too. And so those are like the places that we go and patronize, because we know we can go in there and use our reusable containers, because you can use a reusable container and still be clean.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like about washing surfaces after you touch something. Wash your hands after you touch something. It's you can still have great sanitary practices and still use reusable containers. So it's good to you know, go places that are locally owned, small businesses where you can actually maybe even meet the owner and talk with them about stuff like that and see what they're all about, see how they feel about it.
Our favorite sushi place runs our container through their dishwasher first.
That's awesome. Yeah.
You never know.
No, I love that you gave that advice, because when in college, I feel like Ashley probably can relate to this. I felt like it was really hard to keep my sustainable practices in college, and I almost had to forego some experiences, which didn't really, I would still go out to dinner with friends, but maybe not participate in utilizing what they had to offer if it was more of a convenient type of restaurant. And I would actually do what you said with the paper and just ask them to leave. And at first it would confuse people. The restaurants would say, wait, what do you mean? I'm like, it's okay. I just want the sandwich wrapped in the paper. You can leave everything else off of it. I don't need everything else. And a lot of people are willing to make those accommodations. And like you said, I know this is a conversation I've had with several people about how they don't like thrift shopping, or they don't like bringing reusable containers to restaurants, and it's the sanitary aspect of it. But when you think you go to a fine dining restaurant, right? Those plates, they only have a limited supply of plates. These plates are being used day over day, multiple times a day for multiple meals. You're eating the silverware, or if you're staying at a hotel, those sheets are being used for different types of people across the world. So it's no different, in my opinion, of having a restaurant that allows reusable containers, or thrift shopping and washing your clothes. And it's just being smart about that and doing your research as well. And Katie, I thought you could weigh in with kind of our Blue Table initiative and, asking restaurants to possibly consider more sustainable options.
Absolutely. So definitely supporting the restaurants that One World Zero Waste is calling ahead, and they know that they are committed to reducing plastics is really important. But we at Loggerhead have a network of restaurants that we've partnered with that are committed to helping our oceans and reducing single-use plastics in their facilities. And that's our Blue Table program. And those are businesses that are really going the extra mile to ensure that they are not giving out unnecessary single-use plastics, but also promoting sustainable seafood within the community and within their establishments. So that sustainable seafood action aspect is another big part of sustainability as a whole. And they really just work to source local items and local seafood, because local seafood is almost always the most sustainable option you can get. And another thing really quickly is that people have been getting really creative, because a lot of plastic bags have been seen because a lot of grocery stores are not really letting people bring in their bags, but it's been a hot topic in the marine debris world right now. So people can just bring their carts outside and bag their own stuff right outside and bring their own bags, not have to use those single-use plastic bags at the grocery stores. So that's just getting creative with sustainability is a really important thing too.
Yeah, I experienced that. So I bring my reusable bags everywhere, and very conscious of the packaging that is in the grocery store. And when COVID hit, I almost had a panic attack because they were not allowing us to bring in our reusable bags into the store, which I completely understand. And there was about 3 grocery trips where I didn't even think to just ask, can I just take these? If it was only a few items, I did carry them out. But it was the first few times I did big grocery trips. And I kind of just succumbed and then brought the bags back to be recycled at Walmart and Publix. But then it was the 4th time I was like, maybe they'll just let me keep it in the cart. Let's just ask. Let's just try. And, when you can, it's best to do that. And then One World said, sometimes you just have to make choices. Wherever you're putting your money is a vote for the world that you want to live in. And if you want to see a more sustainable world, you have to support the brands and the organizations and help create change. And not everyone has the means to do it. Sometimes sustainability isn't always the most economical, but in the long run, as we've talked about and will continue to talk about, it usually is. But sometimes that upfront cost can be deterring to people. So it's really important that if you do have the means and are able to make those sustainable decisions for others, go ahead and support the businesses like One World. And hopefully that will cause other brands to become inspired and, want to change their practices. Ashley, can you weigh in a little too?
Yeah, so I think as far as looking at sustainability in the home, I think the closet is a really great place to start. It's where I started personally because it felt so achievable and just a little bit simpler. And so my first piece of advice would just be to kind of take stock of your closet, do a little bit of a closet inventory and just figure out what's in your closet, what state is it in, how much are you wearing on a regular basis. And I think a lot of people like to just purge their closets when they get on big trains like this and start fresh, but don't. Just keep everything you have. And I think that's kind of a common misconception. You don't want to get rid of clothing because then it just goes straight to the landfill. So kind of learn what you like, reincorporate what you don't like as much, see if you can still make it work, take good care of your clothing. You can spot treat stains, you can sew back on buttons. There's little things that you can do to make your clothing last longer that does not take a lot of effort. So that would be my first kind of tip, is just to kind of love what you own and take good care of it. And then secondly, I'd say when you're done with your clothing, make sure you're donating responsibly. There's a little bit of an issue sometimes when people donate. So you have to do your research. A lot of times clothing just ends up in a landfill in a different country when you donate it. And so I say, without having to do that research, just your best bet is to donate to small local organizations that could use those clothing donations. They're in every town. It just takes a quick Google search to know who needs your clothing in your town. So that would be my suggestion for clothing donations. And finally, when you do decide that you are ready to purchase something new, I'm a huge fan of thrifting and of secondhand shopping. One, because it's kind of like a treasure hunt, honestly, and two, because it's very affordable way to shop sustainably. But also, there's a lot of amazing brands kind of emerging in the green space that are dedicated to creating good natural fibers that are promoting sustainability in their packaging and in their supply chains. So really seek those out as you start to slowly build your wardrobe into something a little bit more sustainable.
No, I love those ideas. And same thing with me. I got into really thrifting as a sustainable means for clothing. And like you said, it does get really exciting. It's fun to piece together and see what you can find. And also you can repurpose clothing. So as you mentioned, recycling, but I think a lot of people, don't think about how t-shirts can be used. You can use them as rags for your garage or painting or cleaning your kitchen. You can use them to make a cool blanket. I have a few in my house. You can also use, this was actually made out of an old piece of clothing. So it's a mask for COVID. So there's always ways that you can get creative and reuse the items. And I've even done a few closet swaps with some of my friends where I'm kind of tired of my clothes, but I do try to keep good care of my clothes. And just because I don't want them in my life anymore, I'll kind of reach out to someone that's a similar size and see if they want to take a few items, and I'll take a few items. And now, with the amount of thrift stores emerging, there's endless amounts of options, but also even there's outlets like Poshmark or ThredUp where you can actually ThredUp, you can send in your clothes and they'll repurpose them or give them a new life by sewing on a button or taking out a stain. And then Poshmark is actually an app or Facebook Marketplace where you can actually sell your items yourself. And that's something I've been doing a lot during the pandemic, is I've been trying to really support my community and trying not to buy from big brands. And so whether that's going to One World or, some of our local restaurants, but it's also using apps like OfferUp and LetGo and Facebook Marketplace that allow me to actually purchase items from my neighbors. And I think that encourages them to not to, dispose of it. And Ashley, something I wanted to talk about a little too was how you spoke yesterday, and I loved it, that, don't be afraid of reaching out to your brands. And One World said this with the restaurants, but I think when it comes to fashion and beauty, we forget that they usually do want to be favorable, right? Fashion and beauty brands want to be in trend. And I think they're usually the first to change because there's so much pressure from their followers. So could you tell us a little bit about reaching out to some brands if you feel like you want to know more about their sustainability practices or see them make change?
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. The fashion industry is very responsive. They care about their stakeholders. And I mean, they supply our demand. If we're demanding something, then they're going to change what they do. So I think this is where Instagram comes in for me personally. It's a great tool for reaching out to those brands, because if they have an active social media presence, then they're always answering DMs, always answering questions. So if you have a brand that you're not sure about, that you love to purchase from, but you really would like to know more, first, do go to their website, because you might be able to find like a corporate responsibility or a social or an environmental impact webpage, and they might publish that information. But if you don't find it, hop on over to Instagram or to their customer support and just shoot them a message. And a lot of brands do follow up, because they want, if they have those kind of ideas in place, then they want to tell you about it. They want to tell you that they're doing the right thing. So they're going to be quick about that. And if they don't, I mean, silence speaks very loudly too. And so you can know that going forward and continue just to express to the companies that you love that this is something that you value. And I personally believe when a large group of people expresses those demands, like, it's going to change how companies make their clothing.
Yeah, and I definitely, it's the power of the consumer. And also, I know something that a lot of people have asked us on social media is, how do you know if an organization is actually doing what they're preaching? So they might say that they're being environmentally friendly, but if they don't have that transparency statement, or that transparency statement might be vague, how do you really know? And it does take research, and sometimes you can't truly find the answer, but you can look for signs. And I think it has a lot to do with that brand's messaging and also packaging. Packaging is the first telltale sign. If a company is preaching sustainability and being eco-friendly, and then you get a box from them and it's wrapped in plastic and has plastic tags on it, it's probably not that they're that focused on sustainability. And I know with us in our retail efforts, we work with vendors, and we actually send letters to vendors that have sent us sample products that don't have sustainable packaging. And we've actually asked them to change their packaging before we become a vendor with them. And some vendors say yes, some vendors say no, but that's a choice. And at least you're trying to make that change. Something too I wanted to talk about, this was a great comment from Enya. Patagonia emphasizes repairing items rather than replacing them. And something that I love about Patagonia is they're actually using technology to estimate what type of designs and textiles will be popular amongst consumers and actually withstand weather conditions. And so they're actually doing research with some of the researchers at Clemson on this. And so it's in an effort to actually reduce the amount of textiles that they use. So what happens in the fashion industry, and actually really any production industry, is a company will overproduce items, right? They try to forecast and project how much of an item will sell out, but every year it happens. Companies across the world make too much of an item. And if these items don't sell, a lot of the times they'll give it to like a thrift store or a secondhand store like Goodwill. A lot of the times you'll see Target items completely fresh, not opened, in Goodwill. And this is what's happening is these items, they made too much of them and they're not selling out. So then you can find them. Or in Overstock, same thing as that. So Patagonia is trying to actually curb that with technology and doing research beforehand and planning. And I think that's something we need to put pressures on, not just the fashion industry and the beauty industry, but companies all over, just pressure on them to be more responsible in their production and then the items for post-consumer life as well. So making sure that they're taking care of the product from production all the way to end. And so we're not left with just a ton of waste on this planet.
I think that's a great point. I mean, Patagonia and a lot of the other more like nature outdoor brands are doing a really great job of that because it appeals to their consumers especially. I've also found Eileen Fisher and a lot of other high-end brands with quality products to give their consumers are actually starting to accept those products back. If they have mild wear kind of marks and things like that, they'll actually resell them at a discounted price. I believe Patagonia does this and definitely Eileen Fisher. And so that's kind of the direction I see a lot of high quality brands going, which I'm really excited about because it makes them affordable for people and they're kind of becoming a model for how you should reuse your clothing.
Yeah, no, I love seeing the changes. And this segues perfectly into my next question. So what are some of the brands that you've seen really start, making those sustainable changes? Any that you personally love or recommend? And then some issues that you see with brands that they're trying to get it right, but there are a few things that they've kind of missed out on. Katie, if you want to start, or One World will go to you. We'll go back to you.
Okay. So for one thing, we do kind of have our own brand that we weren't super satisfied with what we found in like reusable swaps. So we have our own line of stuff that we sew in Jupiter. So we wanted to make sure that we picked the fabric. We're getting a lot of stuff, like we didn't want a lot of things that come to our store wrapped in plastic. So we just get fabric, give it to our sewers, and everyone's just sewing from home. So that's helped us out a lot for our reusables. And then a lot of our products that are refillable, we don't make. So like Uncle Harry's toothpaste is my favorite, our favorite. We started using it before we opened the store because it came in a glass jar, but it also happens to be just like the best toothpaste. And they sell the refills. So we have like a larger amount here, and the refill is discounted. And it's just like a really great product. Dentists always think all of our customers are like using fluoride. And then Chagrin Valley is another one we love because they have really pure organic ingredients, and everything is like eco-friendly bars and aluminum tins and glass jars. So I really like their products.
Yeah, and then other stuff that we have like that is we try to get as much stuff as local as we can. Like Uncle Harry, Chagrin Valley, they are they're from the West Coast and they're super great companies and everything like that. But we also try to like source as much like in town, or at least like in our area that's like drivable for us, as much as we can, because that cuts down on our carbon footprint. I have like a little Ford Focus. I can do a lot of driving around, and it takes a lot less energy than a semi truck driving across the country.
Like our body soaps. We have bars of body soap made in Palm Beach Gardens.
That's right. We have dog treats made in Jupiter. And we do like local organic produce once a week. And so that is just like coming from just around us, driving distance.
Pick it up from all the farmers. And then it's like super fresh, lasts longer. It's like we kind of figured out how to skip the waste end for our grocery store, because there's actually a ton of food waste. Little segue, but there's like so much food waste in grocery stores. So we've kind of figured out if we only order what has been ordered, there's no waste at all.
Right.
Like rather than buying in excess, because you don't want to buy in excess for your home, but also the stores you support, you don't want to go see like tons of rotten food sitting around.
Yeah, the amount of food waste that just America alone produces is pretty alarming. And that's something that was kind of one of my awakening moments when I really started to think about what I was throwing away. And I loved yesterday when we were talking, you guys talked about a trash audit. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's a really great place to start for people who, they've just realized, oh, there's like a ton of trash. So we recommend this trash audit. You just look in your trash and you see what is really abundant, what the worst items for you is, because it's different for everybody, and try to eliminate one thing at a time, or like whatever you feel most comfortable eliminating. Some of it's really easy and oftentimes a much better product.
Yeah, and that's something for me when I'm ashamed, but I didn't start cooking till I was in college for myself. And so when I started cooking, I wanted to make sure that I was also eating the right nutrients, which I think is hard for a college student. You're trying to figure it out, making sure you're not just eating like pizza all the time. And so I started really paying attention to the ingredients I was buying at the grocery store, and what I was wasting, if anything. And then once I realized that just even cutting off the tops of peppers, if you're not using that to make a salsa or make a smoothie, then you're most likely just throwing it away. And so that's when I got into composting. And it really has cut down so much on my trash. Like, we really don't have a lot of trash in my household, because between recycling, reusing, putting things or donating things to a secondhand store, and composting, you really are finding an outlet for everything that you have. And composting, I know Katie and I had a long conversation one day at work about this, but composting can be a little terrifying, just because there is some science and chemistry to it. But there are so many tutorials and resources online that people have figured out how to do it before you. And, just look for those resources online and follow them. And people are leading the path for you. But that's something small I think you really can do. And it's super easy. Katie and I both have compost in apartments before, where you're limited on space, but you make it work. And there's ways to speed up the composting process too, with using worms that actually break down the materials faster. So you're not left with this huge heap of a pile. And then also something that's taking a little step further is if you do have those pepper tops or those pepper stems, you can actually juice them and make them into a nutritious juice to get some of your natural vitamins. So there's always ways to kind of repurpose and extend the life of what you're using. It just takes a little bit of research and looking out to experts like One World, talking to you guys. I'm sure you have great conversations in your store all the time. And organizations that have a sustainability or a conservation sector like Katie. And then Ashley, I know you've been great. Like, you really have done so much research just on your own. Like, you took initiative to really compile resources, and you're actually giving those resources to your friends and really trying to make a wave with changing your circle around you. And for me, I think conservation really starts like within and then at home, and then trying to affect your networks. And I think One World, you guys are kind of the epitome of that come to life. You know, you saw that and then you made your store, and now you're slowly affecting your community. And I think if we all kind of band together and do that, we'll start creating a more sustainable society. But before we end today, I wanted to leave on a few tips that you really think our supporters can do today, especially for World Oceans Month. We were really hoping that this month, even though every day should be Earth Day, this month people can really focus on just creating sustainability at home, taking those few small steps just to create a healthier lifestyle for themselves and the planet. So if each of you could just share a few tips, that would be great. Katie, you want to start us off?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say one of the things that's been really helpful for me to find different sustainable items is just talking to people about it. If I find an item that I'm really excited about, that's sustainable and that I use all the time, I share it with my friends, and it's really then a really interesting way to learn about what products are out there. But also just keeping that curiosity alive. Like, so if you do have an item and you're like, oh, this is a disposable plastic item, I wonder if there is an alternative. And just doing that research and learning more about the sustainable items that exist is really, really helpful. So that's it.
And Katie, do you have any resources that you can kind of recommend to some of our followers and supporters?
Definitely. We are coming out with a sustainability swaps guide that everyone can look up. It should be out at the end of the week. And then we also just did a Earth Month post where we did every single day for 30 days. We did little tiny sustainable challenges that everyone can take part in. So you can look back on our LMC website and maybe go through those 30 days for World Ocean Month if you didn't already for Earth. So.
And Ashley, could you give us a few tips and a few resources specifically to creating sustainability within your closet and your wardrobe, and beauty as well, if you have some of those tips?
Yeah. So the first thing I like to say, I'm actually reading a book right now. It's called The Conscious Closet by Elizabeth Klein. This book is incredible. This is a journalist that wrote it, and she has taken basically everything I've learned the past 3 years times 10 and put it in the most compact, organized, practical application book, which I love. It's full of lists. If you like lists, it's a great book. So I would really suggest reading that if you just want a really easy read that gives you all that information, just like anything from how to mend your clothes to how to appreciate your wardrobe to how to shop sustainably and environmentally friendly. And so I say that's a great starting point if you're a reader and really would like to learn more. Another thing I would say, look for resources online. I have a lot of different brand directories online that I will access. My personal favorite right now is Dressember's. Dressember is an anti-trafficking organization, and they have an awesome brand directory where they have just compiled a lot of brands that are either fair trade or kind of have other similar certifications. They're helping you vet these groups without having to do your own research, which is huge. Finally, the Good On You app is similar to online directories, but it's an awesome resource. They have a lot of ethical and sustainable certifications and standards that they have in place, and they rank all of their brands based on these standards and benchmarks. And so once again, another resource that's kind of doing the work for you and helping you figure out where you'd like to be shopping more. And then I guess finally, I would just say, don't be overwhelmed by this process. I think for me as a 21-year-old, I didn't even like the idea of cutting out the clothing I was buying because I want to like stay on trend and, you know, enjoy my wardrobe. But I've learned that by slowing down my consumption, I'm actually appreciating what I have more. And I think that that has been such a valuable lesson to learn. It's something you can learn at any age. And so that would be my little bit of encouragement as you start to look into these resources.
No, thank you, Ashley. Those are all great. And I know we had this discussion a few times too previously. If you are kind of into design and fashion, it can be hard when you're reducing your closet or slowing down your consumption. But it also makes you more creative, which is part of the reason that I thrive on thrifting, is you really start looking at clothes differently. And even if maybe clothing doesn't have like all the buttons you like, it's something as, okay, can you repurpose that shirt, or could you cut it and sew it a little bit and make it into something new? So there's always ways to stay positive and attack sustainability in a very easy way. And One World, any tips and advice and resources for our supporters?
Definitely. Kind of just to go off what you were just saying is like, you know, don't stress out about it. You say a lot of people look at sustainability as like a daunting thing to go for, but really, like, if you just accept that you want to do better in the way that you're living, just know that whatever you're doing with that intent is already better than what you were doing before. So don't get stressed out about mistakes that will happen. Instead, you should like embrace your mistakes, because that's what we all learn from, our mistakes. And then just from there, we just grow and get stronger. It's literally just like anything else we go towards in our lives, to becoming better at something. It's like, you know, become better at being sustainable. Sometimes it's messy, but just like love the mess, and the messiness is going to go away, because you're going to get into a rhythm and you're going to get into a groove, and you're going to feel better about that rhythm and groove, and just like the way you're living your life feels good.
It will become normal. You know,
well, that's what I loved about your story yesterday. If you guys would kind of talk about like how during one of your first dates, or when you used to go on dates a few years ago, you started becoming aware to the packaging, and now really that packaging isn't even in your life anymore. Would you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sometimes, you know, we find ourselves like reminiscing on like you know, when we first started dating, we would just like run in somewhere, get like, you know, some food to go, maybe like a corn dog for the car in a little styrofoam container. And we were just like blown away that it doesn't happen anymore. But it's not like we're missing it, you know, we're just, it's just different now.
Yeah. And like, you know, gas station snacks on a road trip, like now that is, we have better snacks that we like bring with us all the time, you know?
Mastered the zero waste road trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things too, is like I'm a little excessive. I always bring like a water bottle, a reusable water bottle, a reusable coffee cup, maybe another reusable drink, and like some reusable food. But it does make road trips better. And then it's healthier for your body too, because sometimes it's not always easy to find restaurants that offer those. And a lot of times it's more economical. I cook out, or I cook in most of my food. I really don't purchase food out. And when you're traveling, I think that was a eye-opening thing for me a few years ago. I thought most of my life was pretty sustainable, but then I was traveling from college to home about 4 to 6 times a year. And I kept saying to myself, well, I'm traveling. How can I be that sustainable? It's not really feasible for me to be. And I started looking at my life and realizing that those 6 times a year add up. It's 6 times a year that I could not have waste at all. And it's not inconvenient, you know, it's as simple as bringing bamboo utensils with you in a little pouch, and a reusable water bottle, and some food in a glass containers. And then you have those containers wherever you are when you're traveling, which you can use to store and bring home items as well. So it just adds more purpose and meaning to my trips, I think. Well, yeah. Go ahead, Katie. Yeah.
You're looking for a resource here.
Yeah, we have some good resources. So
we have this book too, A Zero Waste Home. And the author of A Zero Waste Home, Bea Johnson, she is a great online resource for, even speaking of traveling, you can go anywhere and look up. She's got a bulk food finder, you know, and you can look up where you're at and find out the places that you can go and shop zero waste, because that's, you know, when you're out and about and that's what you dedicate yourself to, then that's an important thing and an important resource to have.
Yeah. Her book also has, like, you know, anything you need for the home and what she's replaced it with an eco-friendly version. And it's all from like a minimalist standpoint. So it's everything that you probably already have in excess in your home. You know, I think she makes her eyeliner with almonds. You got almonds. You know, but just simple, easy things that, you know, we don't always think about because it's different right now. But we've come, this whole convenience thing has only been around for like 50 years.
Yeah, that was so surprising, but true.
Yeah, we can get back to how things used to be.
Yeah, that's one of her Instagram's a great and easy resource too. I know some people, if you're just trying to test out sustainability, she really puts a lot of simple tips and guides in her stories and on her regular Instagram posts. And one of the ways that I kind of dove into sustainability was books, but then later on in life was just following the hashtag zero waste living or zero waste. Or striving for zero. It really can be as simple as that. People don't typically use those hashtags unless they really firmly believe in living a zero waste life. And it's great to find some of those leaders and organizations that are really committed to that type of lifestyle. And just becoming more knowledgeable and becoming more educated is one of the first steps. And then from there, like you guys all said, just staying positive and doing the small things, because the small things do add up. And when you look at Bea Johnson's, her waste that her family collects, it's literally a year is literally in a jar this big. And it's amazing. But when you really start looking at your life, you can see how much you can eliminate, and you're not missing anything. You're just adding value and saving money when you are repurposing things. I saw in our comments someone discuss using your compost for fertilizer. And yeah, compost is a great fertilizer. It's a great natural fertilizer. My succulents have taken off. They are the largest succulents I've ever had in my life. And it's from an all-natural organic compost fertilizer. And that's something we discuss a lot at work, is what you're using in your yard and in your home and on your body is all ending up in our oceans. And so it's as simple as replacing your sunscreen or your beauty products, or maybe even creating some of your beauty products. But I know, Katie, you had a few last tips before we signed off.
Just something that One World Zero Waste said yesterday, and we kind of touched on, is that it doesn't have to be this daunting thing, but just pick one thing in your life. Just pick one disposable plastic item, single-use plastic item that you use every single day or regularly, and be like, okay, I can do this one item. And then once you've basically eliminated that, and you're like, okay, that wasn't so bad, then pick another item, and then another, and then pretty soon you'll be like One World Zero Waste, and they'll have no trash really on your road trips or anything. So it's not that, yeah.
And I think having a friend, you guys, One World, it's great that I think that you guys are together in a couple. That's so awesome, because I think it makes it easier when you have that partner or a friend to help you get through it and share it. So if you can find someone that's just ready to make those choices with you. I know Katie and I swap a lot of stuff and discuss a lot. And Ashley and I used to as well, and we will still. And just having those people you can bounce ideas off of or hold accountable to, I think it's important to kind of set the example. If you're out with your friends, if they offer to-go containers, being the first to say no, or saying, oh, can I use my reusable? It usually starts a chain of reaction where everyone else feels like they also should participate in that. Or Katie, I know you and your roommate both keep glass bottles, refillable bottles in your fridge. If people come visit you and they see that and that's their only option, they begin to become accustomed to it. So really putting sustainability in front of the people in your inner circle helps. But before we sign off, does anyone want to say anything to leave our viewers inspired for World Oceans Day?
Happy World Oceans Day.
There's
Get out there and do it.
There's literally nothing more important than having a planet to live on. None of all of our issues, nothing would matter if there's nowhere for us to live. So
That's
it's super
very true.
Take care.
Happy World Oceans Day, everyone. And if you want to reach out to any of us, please follow One World Zero on their social media pages. If you live locally, visit them in their store. They're a great resource. Ashley, you can find her on social media and LinkedIn. She's a plethora of knowledge when it comes to slow fashion. And Katie, she's at Loggerhead. You know where she is. And we try to push things out on our social media as well. We all of us really try to be as informative as possible. If we can't help, we can at least probably direct you to someone who can help. So dive into World Oceans Day and try to live a healthier life for yourself and the planet. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, guys.